Hi guys, and welcome to a tutorial and showcase for Skill Tree. So there's been a number of changes made since the original creation of Skill Tree, so I thought I would create a video that showcases Skill Tree in a nutshell as it stands from the current version 1.2.2. So let's get into it. So Skill Tree is a progression system that you can be added to your server. And allows players to gain XP and levels by doing tasks such as collecting hemp or cutting trees down, mining rocks, killing NPCs. There's 55 different XP sources by default built in, all of which is configurable and customizable. So it does have a number of different ways that players can really enjoy the game. And what it does is when a player levels up, they are rewarded with a skill point. And skill points can be used to unlock abilities and nodes and kind of make their characters unique on your server. So there are a number of permissions required to get this plugin running. So if we go into the skill tree permissions, I'm just using the permission manager from Kotlin. We can see here we've got admin, all, keep bag on death, buildcraft, and a few others. So I'll take them all one by one and explain what they do. So admin is really just for using the admin commands, such as giving XP, skill points, and a few others, resetting data. All is for access to all of the skill trees. It's only required if you're running servers with that you want to segregate access to. So, for example, if you're running an RP server and you only want to give access to, say, the cooking tree, and no others, you can do so by disabling everything and only giving access to the cooking tree. Keep bag on death is related to the extra pockets pouch, which is one of the abilities we'll be covering later on in the video. This just simply allows players to keep that on death if they die, regardless of what the configuration says. The chat command is basically being able to use the chat command to open up the menu. Don't need that. So combat, harvesting, cooking, medical, mining are all the different trees that you can give access to. You don't need to give permissions for these because by default the config automatically enables it for everyone, or you can give access to all if you want to give access to every tree. So you can do permission based if you want, again, if you want to give access to individual ones. No limit is basically no point cap for the player, so they can accumulate as many skill points as they want and spend as many skill points as they want in the tree. Whereas by default there is a 200 skill point limit. No titles removes the Betterchat titles if you're running Betterchat. Scavenging, that's another skill tree. Tree gives access to the actual tree, so this is required for players to open and use the skill tree. VIP is if you've got specific VIP permissions, such as permission to reduce the amount of XP a player loses when they die, if you've got that set up higher, or the amount of skill points that a player can invest into the tree if you want to override the default values for VIPs, or the XP rate. So if you want to give them an XP multiplier so they gain XP faster, you can give them, you can actually create your own permissions within the config, which I'll cover later on. And then XP is required for gaining XP. So that's the permissions in a nutshell. So let's get on to the XP gains. So if I get myself an axe and I walk up to a tree here, you'll see when I hit the tree, a little XP bar is appearing above my head. So I'm accumulating XP, and in the bottom right corner of my screen you'll see my little pump bar here, which is also going up and tallying up as I hit this tree. So there's a different XP value for hitting the tree, and then there's a different XP value for knocking it down, which you'll see there, 40 XP for knocking the tree down. So we accumulated 166 XP from that, or from tasks beforehand as well. So let's just quickly level this up. Almost there. Done. So I gained a level and earned 1 skill point. So my new level is level 1. So now that I've got a level, I can actually look at investing into the skill tree and unlocking some progression there. But before we get into that, I'll cover off a few other things before I do. So there's different types of or modifiers to the XP as well. So players can also gain additional XP during the nighttime if they've got the plugin configured to do so. So if you want to give extra XP for nighttime gains, you can do so by adjusting it in the config. By default it's turned off, but again you can do it. There's also a rested XP pool, which I'll show you here. Rested XP pool is how much XP the player, when the player logs off of a nighttime, you can configure it so they'll accumulate a rested XP pool over hours of being offline. So by default it's 1000 XP for every hour they're offline, and then when they jump back online they'll be given an accelerated XP gain until that pool is depleted. So it gives players a bit of a catch up if they have to disconnect for the rest of the night or come back in the morning to do that. So it gives them the ability to catch up and not feel like they're falling too far from behind. And then we also have color changes in modifiers, which I will show you in just a second. Alright, so I've just changed it to nighttime. So if we hit a tree now, you'll see that the XP values change. So I've set the nighttime modifier to 1.5 times. So we're getting 50% extra XP at nighttime. And you can see the color of the actual icon has changed as well. See the bloody tree? There it is. So it's gone to blue. So that's how the XP system works. I mentioned before, there are 55 different sources of XP that players can, 55 sources that players can accumulate XP from, and there are also modifiers for power tools like chainsaws and jackhammers. So you can check the configuration more for that. But let's get into the actual tree side of it now. So we have a lot of different nodes here for the tree. We have the mining skill tree, woodcutting skill tree, skinning, harvesting, medical, combat, buildcraft, scavenging, vehicles, cooking, and underwater. So there are a number of skill trees available. To unlock a node, it's as simple as clicking the particular node to get information about it. So we can see here, amateur miner, this skill increases your mining yield by 5%. We have stroke of luck, which is a 5% chance per level to spawn a new node after the node is destroyed. So you've got all these different types of nodes that we can unlock. And you can see here that we have 1 point available to spend, and this is our total points spent, and this is the maximum that we can spend in the tree. So in the tree in its entirety. Now, in order to unlock future rows, you need to first put enough skill points into the row above it. So, for example, with the first row, it's automatically unlocked because there's zero points required for this row to be unlocked, whereas this row requires at least 5 points in the previous row. And this one here requires at least 10 points in both the previous rows. So for example, if I put 5 into amateur miner and then 5 into adept miner, I then get access to row 3, which I can put in here as well. Finally, we have the ultimate, and a lot of the trees have ultimates. And ultimates are just basically passive things or potentially active things that run in the background that give players an incredibly large buff. And all these are configurable, so values are configurable. You can disable ultimates entirely if you want to as well. But these require 25 points to be invested in the skill tree before they can be unlocked. And again, this is all configurable, so if you want to increase that value or reduce that value, you can. You can see here that we've got the ultimate stone. Stone sense is the ultimate for the mining tree, which gives the player the ability to locate nodes within the 200 meter radius. So it just kind of paints it on the map, which we'll go through later. So to unlock a node, so we've decided that we want to increase our mining yield. We're going to select it, and then we're going to click level up. And you can see here that our points being reduced to 0. We've now got 1 point spent in this tree. We have 1 point spent total, and we can see our buff information on the side. The players also have the ability to respec as well. So if I give them some scrap, by default I've got scrap set as the respec currency, and it's 15 scrap per point in order to respec, and that's points spent entirely within the tree, and respec is done entirely within the player's account, not per tree. So if I want to respec, I can click on that, click yes. You can see here I pay 15 scrap to respec. My points been increased back to 1, and the node's been reset back to 0. So I can respec and change it at the cost of scrap. It also supports economics, server reward points, and custom items. So let's give some some skill points to my character, and we're using an admin command. Give SP. You know, let's just give some. Yeah, so give SP. You will say 30. So I now have 31 skill points I can use. So let's unlock the nodes, and I'll show you how the unlocks work in rows. So if I click 1, 2, say we'll put 3 points into Amateur Miner, and say 2 points into Stroke of Luck, we now have access to row 2. Now I can continue to level this up if I want to, or I can start investing points into row 2. So if I decide to put just 5 straight points into this one here, you can see that it automatically unlocked the following row when I got to 4, because I've accumulated a total of 10 points in both of these rows, which is all that's required to unlock row 3. I can then put more points into row 3. But you can see here, despite us having 15 points invested in this tree, we still can't access this one here because we require 25 points in order to do so. So if I put a few more levels in, we'll just unlock a few different things. Now you can see here we've got Stone Skin unlocked, or Stone Sense unlocked now. Now if I go to Ultimate Settings, you can see I don't have any Ultimates unlocked. When I level this up, I get a notification here saying you can locate nodes within 200 meters using a chat command's locate nodes once every 60 seconds. So I can go. You can see here we have a few nodes here. So players can effectively see the locations of nodes. Now these aren't updated when they're mined out. So if I was to give myself a jackhammer and get rid of this, it's still going to show that it's there, because it updates every 60 seconds when it's pressed. So these will disappear after 60 seconds and will no longer be visible. Now if I have a look at my buff information here, I've got the mining yield, which you can see because all 3 of these affect mining yields, it adds the bonuses together. So this is 5% per level, this is 7.5% per level, and this is 10% per level, giving us 112.5% total yield. We then have the node spawn chance. Because this is the only one that affects that node, that chance, it obviously shows up here. Smelt on mine, this one here basically has a chance of smelting the ore when you mine it. So if you're mining metal ore, you have a chance of receiving metal fragments instead of metal ore. Mining tool durability reduces the durability loss of your equipment, so your axes and stuff don't break as quickly. And then we have mining luck, which I haven't unlocked yet, but this gives you a special loot table that players can get access to when they mine nodes out. So when they mine a node out, there's a % chance that they'll receive a unique or a new item, or whatever. So by default, like green cards or red cards or that sort of thing. And then instant mining is a 5% chance per level to instantly mine the node out straight away. So rather than having to hit the node over and over again until it goes away, if this procs, it destroys the node, gives me all the resources I would have given, and I'm done. But you can see here when I go to ultimate settings, I now have the ability to toggle the ultimate ability on or off. So if I toggle it off, I no longer have access to that command. If I toggle it on, I can. It reminds me what the command is if I forget it. A few other things while we're in the settings menus. We also have some player settings. This one here allows you to toggle on the little XP drop that appears on your screen when you are gaining XP. So you can toggle that on or off. You can toggle the pump bar on or off as well. Repositioning the XP bar. So if you want to change the pump bar, its location. So if you change it from the bottom right corner here, we can stick it over on the other side if we want to. So you can do it however you please. So you can see here it's now been moved. I'll just move out of somewhere that's less glary. So we've now got the XP bar here. You can also click. So when we gain XP, so give me just a sec. Yeah, so you got the XP bar there. Toggle extra pockets HUD, which is a button for opening up the backpack for the extra pockets when you have the ability unlocked, and receive notifications from skill tree plugin when the buff triggers. So for example, if you receive a free craft from the crafting perks, it'll tell you in the chat that it procced and that you received that free craft, so you know that you're getting that. Whereas if you don't want to receive that information, you can toggle them off by simply pressing the off button. So that's it for the player settings. Now if we go through each of the trees, I will try to cover very quickly what each of them do, because there is a lot. There's 78 unique skills, and some of these skills double up obviously with multiple tree nodes. So let's start off with the woodcutting tree. So woodcutting, mining, and skinning are all very similar to each other. Usually the first three are about increasing the yield. The middle one's usually around instantly chopping a tree down or mining a node out or skinning an animal out. And the third one is the chimney. This one here is the chimney. So this one basically gives the player a chance of receiving charcoal in addition to the wood. Woodcutting luck is very similar to mining luck, but it's on its own unique loot table. And then we have robust axe, which again is for durability. But then we have the deforestation ultimate for skill tree, which look, what I'll do is I'll give myself 1,000 skill points, and I'll give myself no maximum. Where is it? No limit. So you can see here my limit's now gone because I have that perm. So let's unlock all of these. Oh. Didn't actually give myself the points, did I? There we go. Alright, so now we can unlock the deforestations. This will harvest surrounding trees within a 10-meter radius when cutting them down. So I can toggle this on and off as well. This is actually a pretty cool one. So if I hit this tree down here, all trees within a 10-meter radius also get knocked over and put into my inventory. It also procs other plugins such as Deployable Nature and what have you, and it takes into consideration all of the other perks within that tree that would normally be relevant to chopping them down. Skinning, like I mentioned before, is very similar. It does have a couple of unique features though. So we've got Amateur Skinner, which is simply skinning yield. We also have Skilled Tracker, which is a new one. So it gives the players the ability to use a /track command. You can see here it's simply chat based. It tells me that I've got old animal tracks leading to the northwest. So when it says that, it means that it's quite a distance away. So I keep doing it. There is a delay between attempts as well, so you can see it's a 4.1 seconds, so it's about 10 seconds per attempt. You can see slightly older leading. Oh, okay, that's a bug. So wait for this one to appear again. To the southeast, okay. So it must have just been right on the maybe it's a chicken. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it was a bear just hiding in the trees. So you can use, the players can use it to try and find like animals. We also have instant skin like we do with the other ones. This one actually has 2 durability decreases, which means if you fully max both out, you don't lose durability on any of your skinning equipment. And this one here increases the damage done to animals by 10%. So this is a skilled hunter perk. So this is good if you want to basically go balls to the wall hunting. We also have Survival Chef, which gives you a 10% chance per level of receiving meat cooked rather than raw while skinning. So if you would receive raw pork, you would instead receive cooked pork. And then we have the Primal Identity. This one's pretty cool. So if you've ever played V Rising or anything like that, where when you harvest a human, you get access to their traits. This is kind of similar. So if we unlock this, we can see you will now receive perks when killing a bear, chicken, boar, stag, wolf, and polar bear. So I will try to cover this as quickly as possible because this is this can be quite in depth. And alright, so first I'm going to spawn a chicken. And I'm going to kill it to give the death effects. So you can see here you feel the power of the chicken, you can no longer receive fall damage. So if I was to fall, the any damage I might take would be a little bit of bleeding from the end of it. But that's it. So fall damage gets reduced, and it's a temporary buff. So after a period of time, it's going to randomly tell the player that the buff is worn off, and that they no longer have it. Killing another animal overrides the buff that I get from this though. So for example, if I spawn a boar, kill the boar, you feel the power of the boar flow through you. You may find some useful stuff when collecting wild berries and mushrooms. So, because boars are generally, can be used. Like pigs are good for, have really good noses. When you're searching for mushrooms and berries, you have a chance of finding pretty much a lot of unique items. Items that you would, like buried components effectively. We have bear, which is when you kill it, scientists cower in fear or not engage unless engaged. So if I spawn a scientist, a cargo. This guy shouldn't actually aggro me unless I shoot him. So if I shoot him, he aggroes. So that's kind of how that perk works. If I spawn a polar bear, this one gives me access to an overshield. So you can see it above there. If I would lose life, it would instead come from the overshield, and eventually the overshield will be depleted either after a period of time or when it's completely gone, and I will then start taking damage again. We also have wolves. So healing feels more potent with friends around. So if you're around people within your team, you will receive more healing from syringes and pretty much any healing sources. We have stag, which I can't really demo right now, but basically what this does is it tells me if a player is nearby, and there's a configurable option to update the player's location through walls. Every X seconds, so every 10 seconds, so you can see where the player was, but if they've moved, it's obviously no longer relevant data. But it does tell you, it's good for PvP servers or in PvP environments to show where people potentially are. I think that's all of the animals. I'm sure I'm missing something. Let's just double check by toggling this on and off. Bear, chicken, boar, stag, wolf, polar bear. Yep, cool. So that's how this skinning perk actually works, the ultimate. So moving on to harvesting. Harvesting actually covers two different yield types. You've got the regular wild harvesting yields, which are these three here, and then you've got farmer, which increases the yields from player-grown entities such as corn and hemp and that sort of thing. So we'll level these up, just unlock some trees. We have extra pockets, and this one here, when unlocked, will give access to an inventory. So if I press this, I can see here it's two slots per level, so I have access to 2 slots there. But if I max this one out, I can open it up as well. And see, we now have 10 slots. Pretty simple. This one here is a fishing yield, so 10% level, so 10% per level of receiving an extra fish when catching when I catch fish. And then we have the harvesting yields really, and the farming yields. And then the botanist. This is a really cool perk. There are a lot of configuration options to scale the power of this one back, because it is pretty damn powerful. But basically it gives you the ability to set the genetic composition for plants that you deploy. So if I level this up, you can see here we now have access to a new command called set genes. So we can use that to set the plants to a desired genes. And the cooldown is 0 seconds. So if for instance you if you do set the cooldown to a high value, first let me explain how it works. So I can do /set genes. You can see here this is my plant gene structure. So at the moment I've got it set to all GGG, so I might want to do a bit of yield in there as well. And that's my new genetic structure. So if I give myself, actually I've got a seed here. So if I plant a seed down now, am I too close to a monument? Probably. So if I plant a seed down, you can see here that the genetic composition is given, it is basically inheriting what I've told it to inherit. So that is pretty much how that one works. Now if there's a cooldown, if I was to deploy another seed, it would not give that same genetic sequence, but because I don't have a cooldown, I can deploy as many of these as I like, and all of them have those perfect genetics. So like I said, pretty powerful perk. Obviously can be scaled back as required, so you might want to set it so that it only procs once every hour or something like that. So, or once every 10 hours or what have you. So yeah, so next we have the medical tree. So the medical skill tree is obviously around healing players and themselves, and also preventing elemental damage and fall damage and that sort of thing. So we'll quickly cover this off. Bandage Expert is, on my server, one of the first things people unlock, because it doubles the amount of healing that you get from a bandage. So instead of getting healed for 5, you get healed for 10. Radiation Expert reduces the damage received by 10% per level, and Revitalization gives you a passive regeneration. So if you unlock this, you'll get 0.1 health per level per second. So at maxed out, every 2 seconds you should get 1 hit point back. There is a cooldown that you can configure in there to prevent that regeneration from working after taking damage. So by default it's 5 seconds. So if a player is damaged, they will stop regenerating health for 5 seconds before they can take damage again. Flame Retardant is fire reduction by 10% per level. Accident, Evasion, and Perfect Balance are 10% per level fall damage reduction. So if you have both unlocked and maxed out, you no longer take fall damage. We have Battle Medic, so down player, the skill will heal a down player by, so one revive for 10% of their health per level. So if they have obviously maximum health value of 100, and you've got this maxed out, the players that you recover who are wounded get up with 50 health, as opposed to whatever health they went down with. We have Rugged Up, which prevents you from being damaged by the cold, so ideal if players decide they want to live out in the cold environment. And then we have Second Wind, which gives you a 5% chance per level of immediately getting up after being wounded. So if a player gets up, so he gets knocked down into a crawling state or into the wounded state, there's actually a chance that they just omit that and skip that state entirely and stay up. And it gives them a little bit of health back, and removes all negative effects such as cold, radiation, bleeding, all that sort of thing. And then the final one is Messiah. So this one gives you a 50% chance to resurrect at your last place of death. Now this won't give you all of your equipment, it'll just simply respawn you at the place that you died. And it's a 50% chance by default, but again, you can change this to whatever you want. So you can change it to 100% if you'd like. So let's level this one up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to turn God mode off. We're going to spawn into bed to come and kill us. And then I'll show you how the proc works. Alright, so when we die, when the map screen generates, we're going to have a little resurrect button, which you can see appear down the bottom right corner here. So when we press this button, because it's a 50% chance of us respawning, either we're going to respawn at this location when we press this button, or it's going to say we failed and we'll need to respawn manually. So this button won't work obviously when you're dead. So let's try. So you can see here we failed. So we're going to have to respawn manually and run back to our body like normal. But again, you can adjust that value so players are always able to respawn at their dead bodies if you want to, or have a higher chance or lower chance. So that's how that perk works. Alright, so that's the medical tree done. So onto the combat tree. So we have Animal Tamer, which reduces the damage taken by animals. So taken from animals by 10% per level. Duelist will reduce the melee damage received by 10% per level. Defense Research will decrease the damage done from scientists by 5% per level. So good for projectiles. Scientific Breakthrough, this skill increases the damage done to NPCs by 5% per level, so obviously more damage to heavies and regular and all your tunnel dwellers and everything else. Resourceful gives you a 2% chance per level of not using a bullet while firing, so if you're using a high capacity gun such as M249 or the HM LMG, if you got this maxed out, every 1 in 10 bullets is going to be put back into the magazine. Lucky Shot gives you a 1% chance per level of critically damaging a player in PvP. So these ones here are more specifically PvP buffs, such as Assassins. This one gives you a chance to crit a player, and this one reduces the damage taken by players. Yeah, so more PvP orientated, but you can obviously create your own perks and replace these if you are running a PvE server. And then the final one here, which is the ultimate, is Vampiric Tendencies. So this skill will heal you for 1% of the damage done to certain enemies. The configuration allows you to omit any of these, so you can choose just scientists, animals, and or players, but by default all 3 are enabled. So whenever you do damage to any of these entities, you get access to you get healed. So let's lose a bit of life here. And then we'll spawn something to kill, so we'll just spawn a bear. You can see here that we got some health back. Again, the value is completely configurable, so you can change it so it's higher than 1% if you wish. But again, it's up to you. Buildcraft skill tree. This is obviously about building and crafting, so we have a couple of things for that. So Amateur Tinkerer increases your crafting speed by 5%, Adept Tinkerer by another 5% per level, and Expert Tinkerer by 10% per level, which gives us a total of 100% increase. So it effectively instant crafts, or crafts once per game tick. We also have Thrifty Renovator, which gives you a 5% chance per level of receiving your building materials back when upgrading from your upgrading your building blocks. Thrifty Tinkerer gives you a 5% chance per level of receiving your components back when crafting. Blast Furnace gives you a 10% chance per level to smelt ore when a log is burned, in addition to normal smelt rate. So this one here, it's an interesting one. It doesn't increase the smelt rate of a furnace, it just simply burns an additional resource whenever a log is burned, as opposed to as a standard furnace tick rate, in addition to the furnace tick rate. So if you've got, if you're burning through a lot of wood, this will proc every time a piece of wood burns. Primitive Expert removes durability loss from all primitive weapons, and the primitive weapons list is in the config. You can add in the config, so you can add or remove whatever you want. Researcher gives you a 5% chance per level of receiving your scrap back when researching. And Thrifty Duplicator gives you a 3% chance per level of duplicating an item or crafting. So if you're crafting an AK, at max, there's a 15% chance you'll get 2 AKs. And then the final one here is Access Granted. The skill will allow you to use any color swipe card in any reader to access it. So you can see here when we unlock it, you can now use any colored key card on a swipe card reader to access the door. Power is still required. Success chance is 100%. The success chance can be adjusted in the config, so if you want to make it so potentially cards won't unlock the door and lose durability when they swipe, you can lower that percentage. But regardless of what you change it to, cards will lose durability loss when they swipe, whether they fail or succeed. So if I grab a green card, and we'll go take this over to I'm pretty sure I know the puzzle for water treatment, so we'll go and turn the power on first. Grab a fuse, pop the fuse in, and then we'll head over to the door. So if I unlock this, door unlocked, and I lost durability on the card, despite having a green card in my hand. So simple as that. The next one is the Scavenging tree. This one is all around components and scrap accumulation. So we have first one we have is Looter, so 10% chance per level to receive additional scrap when smashing a barrel. We have Barrel Smasher, which allows us to smash a barrel in one hit with any weapon. And then we have Loot Magnet, which is my personal favourite. This gives you a 20% chance per level to add loot straight into your inventory when destroying a barrel. So let's level all of these up. So here's an example of how this will work. I'll just give myself a really weak weapon such as a torch. Spawn a barrel in. But traditionally this wouldn't destroy the barrel, but with Barrel Smasher it does. And the beauty is it puts it straight into my inventory as well. This also works with ranged, but again it can be configured to not do so. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Let's put God Mode back on. Alright, so if I want a heap of barrels, allows me to gather the materials directly in. And that's it, that's pretty much the long and short of how that one functions. Next one we have is the Lucky Looter. So it gives you a 5% chance per level of finding extra scrap in a crate the first time you loot it. So these next few perks that involve crates, the way that functions is when a player opens a crate up, that crate's cherry's been popped. It can't, anyone else with the perk can no longer trigger it. So if you're the first person to open a crate up, it then rolls to see if you're lucky enough to have extra components or scrap or what have you put inside of it, and if you are, it does. If not, too bad, so sad. No one else is able to roll that same chance on the same crate, so I have to wait for fresh crates to respawn. So that one there's for scrap. This one here is for electronics, has a chance to put electronics into crates, and this one here is for components, additional components. And this is pretty much any component or any electronic that isn't part of the blacklist in the config. So you can add or remove items in the blacklist, and those components won't be added using these perks. These bottom three here, these bottom two here are basically the same as these top two, except for barrels. So it adds electronics and components to barrels as opposed to crates, or in addition to crates if you unlock these ones. And then we have optimized recycling, which reduces the tick speed by 0.5 seconds per level, so doubles the recycling speed at max. Shredder, this automatically recycles components, so this skill automatically recycle components from barrels when broken. So this is an interesting one. So if I just empty my inventory real quick. Maybe just go outside. If I hit a barrel, what's going to happen is it's going to give me the recycled versions of what I would normally get. So you can see here I got high quality and scrap. So this was probably something that had a chainsaw as part of it. Not chainsaw, it had something, a metal blade as part of it. So it gave me the metal blade because that's what I would normally get out of putting that item in the recycler. So that's kind of how that one functions. You get a lot of barrels lined up, you can get a lot of components, but you can see here that's how that one functions. If I wanted to disable that, I can toggle this off, and it should no longer trigger. So I just, got planter box. So you can see here I'm getting full refined components now. So you can trigger on and off depending on what you are hunting for. So you'll have to respec if you do, need to disable it. So it gives players that option there. The next one is the vehicle skill tree. So the vehicle skill tree is all about enhancing Rust's many different types of vehicles. So we've got Crack Horse over here, which increases the horse's attributes by 10, and 20% per level. So you can get some mega fast horses with this perk, and I'll show you how that's represented. So if I spawn a test rideable horse, if I inspect the horse's stats, you can see here its max speed's 38.9 kilometers per hour. If I get on, it's 116 kilometers per hour. Now by default it won't affect trot speed or even sort of run speed like this. It's only for the sprint speed, which you can see here is when I hold down shift. It also doesn't affect the turn speed by default, but you can configure it so it does. So the horse can run very quick, and then when you get off the horse, you can see here the max speed is brought back down to normality. We have the Yachtman skill tree, the Yachtman ability, sorry, which gives you the ability to effectively put a turbo on your boat. So when you have that on, you can press mouse 3, or you can use the turbo chat command, which is /turbo, in order to toggle the turbo on or off. Now you don't actually need to be driving the boat in order to contribute to the turbo, but only one turbo can be active at a time, so you can't stack them. Economical captain will reduce the fuel consumption when using a boat by 15% per level. Economical pilot will reduce the fuel consumption when flying a helicopter by 3% per level and by 7% per level. We have mechanic, which will automatically allow you to repair vehicles at no cost. So if I level this up, and we'll just showcase this one, all you need is a hammer and a broken down car. It's not broken down. You can see when I hit it, puts it back to full health. And then the final one for the vehicle skill tree is tank. So this one will reduce the damage taken, so dealt to your vehicles by 100% by default. The value again is configurable, but just simply prevents you from taking damage in your vehicle from collision or rocket or whatever. But it's only while you're actually inside the vehicle. So you can be running passenger, you can be running driver, doesn't matter, you don't take damage. So it just simply bounces your vehicle around. Whereas if I get out of it, it can still be destroyed. So that is the vehicle tree. So I've got 2 more trees to cover. The next one's very small, unless you have the cooking plugin, which expands this a bit. So you can see cooking skill tree, so easily satisfied will increase the amount of calories and hydration received by 20% per level when eating food. Iron stomach will prevent you from being spoiled by rotten food. So poisoned by rotten food or spoiled food. Or raw food as well, so you can eat raw food without any issues. Glutton will increase your calories and hydration by 20% per level. So this is your max calories, so you can go above that 500 calorie threshold and that 250 hydration threshold. Frugal Rationer will give you a 10% chance per level to receive your consumed items back. So if you want to be able to get your, if you drink a mining tea or a scrap tea, at the max level, there's a 50% chance you'll actually get that back while still getting the effects from it. And the final tree is the underwater skill tree. So we have, this is probably the newest tree in the system. So we'll cover these ones here. We've got Cage Diver, which reduces the damage taken by sharks by 10% per level. We have Guild, which will give us, allows us to breathe underwater for 60 seconds per level. So while we're showcasing this one, actually, let's head over to the ocean. So you can see when I go underwater, I now have a countdown timer at the top right corner of my screen. So my oxygen actually never goes down to 0. So I can continue just to kind of float here. So if we pull up the rest of the tree, we've got Reckless Diver, which gives us an additional 10% damage reduction from sharks. So it gives us a total of 100% shark resistance. We have Shark Veterinarian, that gives you a 2% chance per level of finding a useful item when skinning a shark. Then we also have Treasure Hunter, which gives us a 2% chance per level of finding useful items when looting crates underwater. We have Nimble Fingers, which will allow us to instantly untie underwater crates. And we have Aquatic Combatant, which increases the damage done while underwater by 10% per level. Now this one includes underwater labs. So if we're doing underwater labs, we get better damage. So if we can just find a underwater sunken treasure, there it is. So if I head underwater here and look for a crate, instantly unties them. See if we can find another one underwater here. Unties it as well. So that's how that one works. If I spawn a shark or attempt to spawn a shark, see, I don't take any damage from it. So that's how the underwater skill tree works. Now, the plugin also supports the ability to create your own custom nodes and add them to the tree, but also has the ability to create your own skill trees in their entirety as well. That was one of the newer perks from 1.4.0. So 1.2.0. I lose track of plugin updates with different plugins. But you can basically you can either add your own perks from different plugins, or you can add your own perks from add your own perks from through the config. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new permission to this with via cooking. So I'm just going to reload. I'm going to force a save actually. Now if I go into cooking, you can see we have a new perk which wasn't there before. This one's called Instant Chef. So cooking with the cooking plugin will be instant. So if we level that up, we now have instant access to the cooking plugin. So all this is doing is giving us the cooking.instant permission. And with the config, it allows you to actually give it a separate name. Although I do need to reload the plugin, I think. One sec. Yep, there we go. So we have Instant Cook, which is a permission-based system. So what I'll do is it's actually a good segue into the configuration. So I'll show you how the configuration actually works and how we can set up all these custom things. But before we do that, so I just realized I haven't shown this one yet, we actually have a scoreboard in this system. See here we've got scores based off of total XP values. This will rearrange and update every minute. And when a player accesses, they can see here who has the highest rank on the server. So it just shows you the top 30 or whatever it is. So it gives a bit of competition for players as well. And that's just accessed by a chat command. So let's go into the configuration, and I'll talk you through what each of those do, and I'll show you how to set up a few things. Okay, so we're in the configuration here. So we'll go through each of the settings tiers, and go from there. Then I'll show you a couple of ways you can kind of change up the plugin, really utilize some of the leveling rewards and that sort of thing. So first of all, we have general settings. So we have points to unlock tier 2 nodes and tier 3 nodes, as well as the ultimate. This is how many points are required to be spent within a tree in order to access it. Skill points per level is 1 by default, but if you want to give multiple skill points for each time a player levels up, you can adjust that. This is one of the few adjustments you can make on the fly while the plugin is live as well, as this will automatically calculate how many points the player should have if they're missing any. Although if you've given any bonus skill points, it's not going to take those into account. So yeah, best to make a decision on this before you wipe. Maximum points a player can spend by default is 200. Again, you've got permissions that override this, both in the VIP, or in the next section below, and the no limit perms I gave you. Modified max skill points based on permissions, so must be higher than the default or set to 0. So you can see here no limit has 0, which means we actually don't have a limit, whereas VIP has 240, which means anyone with the VIP tag can spend 240 points. Maximum level a player can get up to is 100 by default, but again you can adjust that. Allow players to respec their skill points is true, so that gives players the option to use that respec button. Cost per point to respec, default is 30, but if you've got the VIP tier, that reduces it down to 15, which is why you saw it as 15 in my demo before. Currency type to respec, scrap, economics, SRP or custom. SRP stands for server reward points. By default is set to scrap. If you do decide to set it as custom, however, you can put the details of the custom item in here. So the display name, the short name and the skin. List of rewards the player receives based on level. So by default is level 10 is included. Also is part of my demonstration. You can see here we've got a list of commands and chat messages that players receive when researching specified level. So left equals command, right equals private message to player. You can replace the player's ID with the curly brackets and ID in the middle, and the curly brackets and name in the middle to represent the name. So you can see here we've got a command here, o.grant user ID, which represents the player's user ID. Cooking.recipe menu.chat, and then we've got no message to the player. The same is for exactly the same below, except we're giving a different permission here. And then we've got the same below where we're giving a different permission here, but then we have a message to the player as well, which says you made it to level 10 and can now cook meals by typing in whatever we want. So this message can be set to whatever the hell you want. You can add hex colors and everything else in there to colorize the text. And this one here can be, can be whatever. So any sort of console command, you can change it up so it says, say name. Name loves cookies. So that'll just simply print a chat message saying print a chat message in the in-game saying the player's name loves cookies. So that's how you can adjust that. And all you need to do is revoke those commands as well. So obviously you're going to be granting permissions. We probably want to revoke the permissions when this all gets reset. You don't have to have revoke commands if you're just giving commands at a one-off, for example, like giving an item or saying something in chat. You don't have to have commands that really revoke that information, so that we need to run when that finishes. But if you do need things to run and be removed when the data is reset, put them in here. Required players to have specific tree permissions to open them. Set by default set to false. Again, if you're running like plugins like my Professions plugin and you only want to allow weaponsmiths to access, the combat menu, or miners to access the mining menu and that sort of thing, set that to true and then only give permissions for the mining menu. Drop bag on death. This is for the extra pockets bag. XP pump bar settings. This is the default placement for where the XP pump bar will be located. By default. This is for any new players connecting to the server. This is the color of the pump bar, the font set for the pump bar, and then we've got the font size for the pump bar. The buff settings are, these are just really, so covering the buff settings, these are just simply different settings for different types of buffs that exist. So you can see here we've got minimum and maximum components for the component perk, maximum electrical components for the electrical component perk, additional scrap like amounts and that sort of thing. So it's all pretty self-explanatory. Just have a read through it and see what's relevant to you and what's not. List of skins that the rationer perk will not refund. This is really specifically for things like cooking, so prevents some sort of loops from happening there. Bag cooldown time is how often the player can use the chat command to open up the bag, and as well as the bag prefab that we use. Primitive weapons for the primitive weapons ability. This is what I mentioned before. These are the weapons that are included by default, but you can add to those if you want, or remove them. These are the chat commands, so you've got a few chat commands that players can use to open up the tree, slashes such as /st, /skill tree, and /skills. We have /score and /scoreboard for accessing the scoreboard. These are the settings for XP, so how much players lose XP when they are killed in PvP, set to false. Players lose XP when they are killed in PvE, set to true by default. And the amount of XP that a player loses when they die, which is percentage based. So when a player dies, they're going to lose 20% of the amount of the XP that they're into their current level. So let's just say they're 1,000 XP into level 9, not quite a level 10 yet. They're going to lose 200 of that XP. This can't reduce them to the previous level though. Just bear that in mind. Maximum amount of XP a player can lose when they die based on permissions. So if you want to add your own custom permissions to override this, again this is all percentage based. So if you want to make it so players don't lose any permissions at all with a certain perk, you can say, you know, no loss, say 0.0. And that will basically mean that the player will not lose XP if they have the skilltree.no-loss perk, so permission. Permissions to adjust XP gain modifiers. So this is if you want to give VIPs or other permissions a higher rate. So if you want to go say 1.2 would give us an additional 20%. 1.5 would give us 50%. 2.0 would be literally double the XP that you would normally receive. How long should the XP be displayed for? This is when it appears on the screen after gaining XP. So it flashes up on the screen for a second and then disappears. This is the text for the unmodified XP value. So this is just the raw XP value if the player doesn't have any modifiers. And this is if it's been modified by rested XP or nighttime XP values. So it'll kind of make it like a blue by default. But these are basically hex colors, so make sure you replace them with hex colors if you're not sure what to do. Prevent XP loss when dying at event hosted by the Event Manager plugin. By default set to true. Highly recommend leaving that alone. Enable XP drops, so XP drop HUD for player by default. So this means that players will automatically have that enabled by default, so they'll see those XP drops. Restrict XP gain to tools listed in their respective tools list is set to false. So if you want to whitelist certain tools to gain XP and exclude everything else you can. Require grown plants to be ripe to provide XP. By default set to true, so players can't just get them into the sapling state and then harvest them for XP. Give XP for crafting ingredients. This is if required for. This is if you have the cooking plugin. And listed meals that will not provide XP. This is again for the cooking plugin. So this was way too easy to get XP crafting from using this bag. These are all the different sources of XP, so experience sources. You can set the XP values to 0 to disable for that type. So for example, if you don't want players to get XP for hitting a node, set it to 0. If you don't want players to get XP for hitting the final hit on a mining node, set it to 0 or set it to the same value as hitting the node. So you can disable by that, but you can see there's about 55 different sources of XP. Some of them require plugins such as the Convoy plugin, the Air Event plugin, Water Event plugin. Others are just simply for opening up crates. Rateable base completions, cooking XP, killing the Bradley, all these different types of sources. And then we have the nighttime settings, which is basically modifier for XP gained at night. 1.0 is the standard XP gain. So by default, you see that as that's the default value. So players will receive the same amount of XP at night time as they do during the day. But if you want to give them an accelerated XP value, you can. Or if you want to give them reduced XP value, you can. Play around with the values to see what works with your server. You also have increased yields for all of these at night time as well. Again, it works the same. 1.0 is the same, 2.0 is double, 1.5 is 50% extra. Should the harvesting yield increase include player grown plants? So again, harvesting yield, if you want to increase the amount of yield that they get, do they get more if they're picking plants that they've actually grown? Wipe and plugin update settings. So erase all data on wipe, wipes everything. So by default this is set to false because a lot of servers like to run skill trees progression between wipes. So they might run it for a full, a weekly server might reset the skill points every week, but then they might actually have the data reset on a force. Erase extra pocket storage and wipe is set to true by default, so it just simply clears the player's extra pocket storage between wipes. Refund skill points on a server wipe, so this refunds the skill points as though they've respec'd it. and gives the player unassigned skill points at the start of the wipe. Give the player with the highest XP bonus skill points for the next wipe. So by default this is set to false, but if you do enable it, when the server wipes, the plugin will calculate the player with the highest XP from the previous wipe, with the highest XP, sorry, from the when the wipe starts, and give that player an additional 5 skill points to start the wipe with. Automatically add new trees from default config is set to true, and automatically new nodes from config is set to true. So this is if I add any new content to the game, to the plugin, it's going to automatically update your nodes for you. Otherwise, if you don't want that, set it to false. And the starting skill points is set to 0 by default. But if you want players to start with, say, 10 skill points when they first connect, you can set that to whatever value you wish. Rested XP settings. Now this is for servers that would like to run a rested XP, and by default it's set to enabled. So set that to false if you don't want that to be enabled. The rested XP pool is accumulating for per hour offline. So if a player's off for 12 hours, they'll accumulate 12,000 XP when they log in next. And what that means, it's not XP that's given to them, it's XP gained that they'll get the bonus on. So for example, if we did an activity that would yield us 100 XP, but we have a rested XP pool of say 1,000, we would actually receive 125 XP based on these values here, because we get a 25% bonus, and then that rested XP pool would be reduced by 125 XP. So it would be reduced down to 775. Sorry, 875. Maximum XP a player can have in their rested pool. 0 is no limit, or you can set the limit so 25,000 is default. So that's the maximum amount of XP that they can have in their pool for being offline. And reset rested XP pools on wipe. So again, you can adjust that to true, set to false by default, but probably it would be good to have that one as true. Tools and blacklists. So this is basically lists and different types of tool settings. Global blacklists, these will not gain XP and benefits at all. So Bone Club, it's probably the most broken item when it comes to the skill tree plugin, because it can harvest everything. Yeah, I would recommend leaving that on there, but if you find any OP tools in there, just add them to the list. Blacklisted parts for the component and the electrical luck abilities. These items will not be provided with those perks. So the component and electrical luck abilities will not give these items. Power tool modifiers. So if you want to give reduced XP and reduced yields for power tools, you can. So 1.0 is default. You can see here 0 is off, 0.5 is half XP buffs, or 1.0 is full XP if you want to go that way. Extra pockets blacklist disallows items that match. So this is for players that or for servers, sorry, that don't want to have certain items allowed in the extra pockets backlog. And this is the extra pockets whitelist. So this, if this has any items inside of the list, what it will do is it will actually prevent any item from being put inside the extra pockets bag that don't match that list. And this is the extra pockets button anchors, so you can adjust these to your liking. The blacklist of items that will not be refunded when using the Thrifty Tinkerer buff, and that will not be duplicated while using the Thrifty Duplicator buff. So basically any item that would be as part of a component for when crafting an item, such as explosives or what have you, players won't get them back as a refund if this Thrifty Tinkerer procs. And it's the same for the duplicator. So if they're creating gunpowder or explosives, I'm not sure where sulfur is in there, but whatever. If they're creating any of these two items, they won't get these have no chance to duplicate. Woodcutting tools, these are tools whitelists, so woodcutting, mining, and skinning tools. So tools need to be on this in order to get access to XP and yields by default. Effect settings: instant repair effects, level up effects, node unlock effects, and node level effects. If you're not sure what an effect is, don't touch this. If you are, change it to your liking. Betterchat settings, so this is basically the title that players get when they have Betterchat running on the server. That shows their level next to their name. So I've got the Betterchat XP title, which is the color, and then we have the actual color for the level. So you'll see the little 0, 1 squiggly line and the 0, 0, so 0 squiggly line and the 1 squiggly line. Don't remove these because these are variables that get replaced with the values in the plugin. Loot settings. So these are for the mining luck, woodcutting luck procs. So players when they proc the mining luck, they'll get access. They'll get a random key card of different colors or some low grade fuel. Woodcutting will get some random food, some random seeds, or key cards. And then we have a white list of loot crates that trigger the spawn chance for components, electronics, and scrap. Set to null to not use a whitelist. If you don't use a whitelist, it just basically means that any loot container has a chance of generating it. Otherwise, it's only crates like these types of crates that will generate these items. Ultimate settings. So we've got the ultimate settings, which we covered earlier in the video, but we'll go through some of the configuration options for them. So background color for the ultimate node is the yellow background you see behind each of the ultimate buttons. You can change that to however you like. It's just simply an RGB style system, but uses decimal places instead of integers. Ultimate settings for woodcutting. We have award XP for each tree that cuts down. I highly recommend they set that to false, because otherwise you're just going to be getting a lot of XP. Distance from the player, which is the radius that the tree will be cut down. So you can reduce the distance if you don't want trees to be cut down from too far away. Ultimate settings for mining: distance from the player, radius that nodes will appear. So if you want the player to be able to see nodes from a further distance, you can adjust that value. Cooldown time on the ability in seconds. This is how often they can use it. How many seconds should the marked ores appear on the player's HUD? Again, 60 seconds by default. Text size, which is 12 by default, and the command. So you can adjust all of that. Ultimate settings for vehicles, which is simply how much is the reduction. 1.0 is a full reduction, 0.5 would be half a reduction, 0.25 would be a 25% reduction. Ultimate settings for medical. So if a chance for the players to resurrect out of 100. So if you want them to get a guaranteed resurrection, set that to 100. Delay between resurrections after a successful resurrection. So this is how often they can resurrect. So they can't resurrect and then die and then resurrect again, then die, then resurrect and die. It has a cooldown for how often they can do it. Ultimate settings for harvesting. Chat command that players use to set their plants, the plant genes. That's set genes by default. Cooldown between ultimate triggers set to 0 if you want all plants to have their genes adjusted. So what you could do is you could set this to say, 5,000 seconds, 5,000 seconds, which means the first plant they put down will inherit from the genetic composition that they've selected, whereas no other plant will inherit from that composition for 5,000 until this 5,000 second timer finishes. Notify a player in chat when they go on cooldown. Recommended for longer cooldowns. So when they plan a thing, it's recommended that you set this to false if you've got a long cooldown here. So set this to true, sorry, if they've got a long cooldown here. Ultimate settings for scavengers. List of items that you don't want the perk to recycle. So low grade fuel, targeting computer, and CCTV. Probably don't want to get animal fat, so low grade fuel is probably good. Players might want targeting computers and CCTV cameras. Ultimate settings for combat. What scale of damage should the player receive as health? So is this by default 1% health for the damage. You can adjust that to whatever you like. So 0.05 would be 5%. Um, 0.50 would be 50%. Should the healing effect of the ultimate work against players? True, true, and true for players, animals, and scientists. If you don't want players to be involved, you can set that to false, and players will not be included in that. Ultimate settings for skinning. How long should each buff last for? 0 being off. So bear will last for 120 seconds, chicken is 600 seconds, boar is 1200 seconds, stag is 300 seconds, wolf is 600 seconds, and polar bear is 600 seconds. And then it gives you all the adjustments for the different perks for all of the animals. So wolf perks, bear perks, stag perks, boar perks, etc. Ultimate settings for buildcraft. So chance that the card with lower access will successfully lock the door. So unlock the door. So by default, it's 100% chance that using a green card and a red card reader will unlock it. But if you want to add more of a chance, so lower the chance it's going to happen, say to 50%, you can adjust that value. And notify the player when their ultimate failed. So if they failed to open the door, it tells them in the chat why. Miscellaneous settings, so bot respawn profile and XP lists. So if you have any bot respawn stuff and you want to add your own profile lists on there, you can. The plugin should automatically grab any bot respawn profiles on startup and save them, and you can just tweak the values. Human NPC names that can be used to open the skill tree. So if you've got human NPC running and you want to add some names of NPCs to open the skill tree, you can, and you just put the names of put the name of the NPC. Should we add a button to the pump bar to open the skill tree? By default, this is set to true, so it will create the button over the top of the pump bar XP, and so you can click on the pump bar XP to open up the skill tree. Skill tree. Now this is the actual nodes. So I've got trees. So trees, mining, woodcutting, skinning, harvesting, medical, combat, buildcraft, scavenging, vehicles, cooking, underwater. So all these nodes. There's a lot of config here. I'm not going to cover everything. You can see here we've got the nodes: amateur miner, stroke of luck, adept miner, instant mining. So if you wanted to add another perk, for example, to the list here, we can say, we'll just copy what with the syntax we've got here and we'll paste it. We'll give it a unique name. Make sure you never have the same name as the previous one. Even if it's a character difference, it's still fine. So we'll say amateur miner 2 to be all creative and stuff. Max level we'll just say 5. Tiered, still tier 1 perk, that's fine. Value per level is still 5. All the same, all that's exactly the same. So if I was to load this up into my server, with this, it's going to give me 3 tier 1 perks to choose from, 2 of which will look exactly the same. The only difference is that it's going to have a unique name, but both are going to contribute to my mining yield. So that's one way you can add custom nodes. You can also change the image URL, so the actual icon that appears on there, and you can add permissions. So permissions are, I'll show you an example of a permission later on. But yeah, permissions can be added as well, which it's a really cool thing to be able to create your own custom nodes, have permissions assigned and removed as players unlock nodes. So that's that. Do I have that example in cooking? Okay, here's the permission example in cooking. So you can see here we've got the instant chef node. By default it's enabled. Its max level is set to 1 because it's an on-off perk. Its value per buff is 1.0 because it's just an on-off perk, doesn't really matter. Its buff info is 69, which represents permission, and value is 5, which also represents permission. But you don't need to have permission and permission registered as the buff info in order to use permissions. It's just simply if you don't want to have any other buff assigned to it. Perk icon, the actual icon URL is added there as well, and then we have the permissions. So if you wanted to add these permissions to other things, you could just simply copy and paste what's in between here and then put it up somewhere else. But yeah, let's we'll focus on this. So you can see here we've got perms, we've got level 1 unlock, which is the maximum level anyway, and we have a list of perms that get generated. So we can say instant cook. So if I wanted to add some more perms to that, I could say cooking dot use, for instance. Call it cooking access. So the left hand side is the permission, the right hand side is what it's actually called in the plugin. So what you actually call it in skill tree. So it gives that kind of plain text explanation around what the permission does. If I wanted to extend this out and make this a 2-tiered permission, I could do that. And what I would do is I would keep the previous permissions in here, because you need to have it so any permissions you have in level 1 also need to be represented in level 2. But you can add additional permissions such as cooking.admin. That would be a terrible idea, but for purposes of demonstration. So we can add an additional one in there, and we can adjust the maximum level to 2. So this can now be leveled up to 2. And it's going to show you what the description is here. So it's only one description it's ever going to show. Cooking food with this cooking plugin will be instant. And you may get admin. That's how that permission system works. The leveling information, you can adjust these values. Do not touch the Y value. The Y value should always remain at 2, but the X value can be adjusted between 0.3 to 0.03 to 0.11 or whatever. I believe it was higher the value, the easier it is, the lower the harder. So basically the lower the value, the more XP between levels. And then there's a command you'll need to run. Just check on the sales page. There's a command you'll need to run in order to actually have those changes come into effect. It is not recommended to do this mid-wipe, because obviously changing the level means that skill points will be missing, and or people will have too many skill points, and not good. So that is pretty much it for the config. What we're going to do now is we're going to go a bit more in depth into creating your own trees and your own nodes. So let's create our own custom node. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do when creating a new tree is we want to copy an older tree that has something in it. So for example, we're going to take the cooking, take a copy of that. We're going to put a comma next to this curly bracket that joins up to the opening of underwater tree, and then we're going to add cooking under it. We're going to rename this to something unique, so we're just going to call this like permissions tree. We're going to delete some of these other nodes that we have no requirement for, so we'll just get rid of everything except for instant chef. We're going to call this something unique, so I'm going to call this just chef, I guess. Leave all that default, so it's exactly the same as we had before, but it just shows you how a new node can be on a new tree. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add the same thing, but for epic loot. So again, because we're creating another entry within this dictionary, we're going to add a comma, and we're going to paste a new version, and we'll call this one epic loot. We'll set the max level to 1. We'll set the tiers of both of these to 1. Key and value we'll leave at 69 and 5 because that represents permission and permission. The URL, you can change that. I'm not going to bother for the purposes of demonstration. I'm going to get rid of, because this only has one tier, I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of the permission for that, because we're only going to put one permission on there. We'll change the permission to be epicloot.use. We'll call this one epic loot. We'll change our description. Provides access to epic loot, and that should be all you need to do. Oh, I put that in the wrong spot, one sec. Let's be this one. There we go. No, I had it right the first time. Disregard me. Alright, so yeah, we've got epic loot within there. So chef, epic loot, close, close, close. It's all closed off fine. So we're going to copy this into my config and load it up on the server. Okay, so we're back on the server now. So I've opened up my skill tree menu. Move across over to the end here. We now have permission skill tree. The images haven't quite cached yet. But yeah, there you have it. So you can see chef, cooking food with cooking plugin will give you instant. So it will be instant. You may get admin, so you can level that up to 2. You can see both of our perms appear there. And then we have epic loot, which provides access to the epic loot plugin. And we can see we have perm epic loot. So that's one way you can kind of create your own permissions or your own trees. You can add combinations of previous buffs on there as well into different skill nodes. It's entirely up to you how you guys want to do it. Otherwise, yeah, you can make it entirely related to permissions from other plugins as well. So you might want to add ones for rateable bases access and give players the ability to buy rateable bases, all those sorts of things. Just bear in mind that you need to have a total. These rows need to abide by the same as the previous trees. So you need to have 5 by default and 10 by default for the second row. Yeah, to be able to access the third row, etc., etc. So that's it for that. The last thing we're going to cover very quickly is leveling rewards. We did touch very briefly earlier on with it, but I'm going to go a little bit further into it because I think it is a very cool feature. So let's go into the list of rewards. So this can really change the gameplay on your server entirely. So an example of how you can utilize this is if you wanted to have access to certain things locked behind the skill tree's leveling system. So for example, if you want players who are level 10 to access the cooking menu, for instance, players who have access to level 10 can now use cooking plugin. You might want to add access to epic loot, so players can then forage for epic loot at level 15, level 20, whatever you want to do. So you can lock content behind the skill tree, and as they achieve those levels, that content becomes unlocked and they get notified of it. So really simple thing to do. This is the kind of format that you have to follow. Anyone who's got a default configuration will basically see this as that, and we'll probably need to add this in. The patch notes will have an example paste of pretty much of this, so you can paste it in as required, and that way you can start adjusting it. But for example, if you want to add multiple leveling tiers, what we do is we go, so say level 20 for instance, you just simply adjust the integer value there. We change the list of commands to whatever you want. So remember, left hand side is the command, right hand side is the message that the player receives. So we'll say epic loot.use, and we'll say you can now use and then we just simply need to revoke that command as well. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So level 20, players get access to the Epic Loot plugin. Level 10, they get access to using cooking. So yeah, nice and easy. I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this video. There are a number of chat commands associated with the plugin. I'll just check out the sales page for those. But that's pretty much how Skilltree was working in a nutshell as of 1.2.2, I think we're up to now. Always looking for more ideas, more suggestions, so feel free. If you're on my Discord, feel free to share configs and sort of some unique stuff that you guys are doing with the plugins, because I mean the sky's the limit when it comes to this sort of thing, and I'm happy to put tools and little tidbits in to help you guys achieve what you want to achieve for your servers. Any questions, hit me up on my Discord. Otherwise, peace.